While you were watching the news, you missed the real story. Between 2018 and 2020, the headlines were screaming about a trade war, tariffs on Chinese goods, politicians in Washington pounding the table, promising to bring jobs home and stand up to Beijing. It looked like the ultimate showdown between the United States and China. But while the cameras were rolling on that political theater, something entirely different was happening behind the curtain. In those exact same years, the absolute peak of the conflict, Wall Street quietly moved $1.4 trillion into Chinese markets. Think about that. BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. They didn't retreat, they invaded. But not with soldiers, with capital. You might think this was a mistake, or maybe bad timing by greedy bankers. You would be wrong. This wasn't an accident. It was the most predictable move in financial history. It is part of a mathematical sequence that has destroyed every global reserve currency for the last 3 centuries. We are watching a repeating algorithm, a 4-stage mechanism of empire collapse. And right now, America is staring down the barrel of stage 4. To understand the future, you have to look at the glitch in the present. July 6, 2018 was supposed to be the day America finally fought back. The first massive tariffs hit $34 billion of Chinese goods. The narrative was clear. Decoupling. The 2 superpowers were breaking up. Yet 1 month earlier, a quiet decision was made in a boardroom that mattered far more than any White House press briefing. MSCI, the company that controls the global investment indices that pension funds and endowments are legally required to track, adds Chinese A-shares to its emerging markets index. This forced trillions of dollars of automatic, passive capital to flow from the West into the East. China's weight in that index went from 0% to 43% by October 2020. While you were arguing about tariffs on steel and aluminum, the financial plumbing of the world was being rerouted. The trade war provided the perfect cover, a loud, patriotic distraction, while the institutional architects of the West built the financial infrastructure for the next superpower. They weren't fighting China, they were buying it. This betrayal feels unique to our time, but it isn't. It is a recurring historical cycle. The global financial system does not run on chaos. It runs on a specific 4-stage life cycle. This mechanism has governed the rise and fall of the Dutch guilder, the British pound, and now the US dollar. Stage 1. The smart money creates a monopoly on currency issue, a central bank. Stage 2. They use that monopoly to fund government expansion and debt. The empire looks unstoppable. Stage 3. The system overextends. The debt becomes unpayable, and the currency starts to lose value, debasing. Stage 4. The architects of the system, the financial elite, move their capital to the next rising power before the collapse becomes obvious to the public. The population is left holding the bag, worthless paper currency, while the wealth has already migrated. We saw this in 18th century France, 19th century Britain, and 1920s Germany. The actors change, the technology improves, but the script remains identical. We are currently living through the transition from stage 3 to stage 4. Let's look at how the masters of the universe perfected this model. Go back to 1694. Britain is broken, fighting France, and desperate. A financier named William Patterson proposed a deal: create the Bank of England. The bank loans the government money at 8% interest, but the real trick is that the bank gets to print the money it loans out. The government gets cash to fight wars, the bankers get perpetual interest on money they created out of thin air. Stage 1, complete. Stage 2 followed immediately. Britain used this infinite credit card to build the world's largest navy and colonize the globe. The British pound became the world reserve currency. If you wanted to trade tea in India or fur in Canada, you used pounds. It looked like the golden age of empire, but the seeds of destruction were baked into the math. The debt exploded from £1.2 million to £885 million by 1815. The lenders didn't just get rich, they effectively owned the government. But as long as the empire kept expanding, the illusion held, until it didn't. By the mid-1800s, the British engine began to sputter. Industrial production peaked, Other nations, specifically Germany and America, started producing steel and goods cheaper and faster. The cost of maintaining a global empire exceeded the income it generated. This is the danger zone. But did the British financial elite go down with the ship? No. They initiated the transfer. The same banking dynasties that built the British Empire started pouring capital into American railroads, American steel mills, and American factories. They saw the writing on the wall decades before the public did. By the time the British pound officially collapsed as the reserve currency in 1931, the wealth wasn't in London anymore. It was in New York. The architects had rebuilt the exact same system on a new continent. The British public was left with austerity and a devalued currency, while the capital that once called London home was busy financing the American century. It was a perfect execution of Stage 4. Sometimes the collapse is fast and violent. Look at Weimar Germany. We are taught that the hyperinflation of 1923 was an accident, a government trying its best but failing. The records tell a darker story. Faced with massive war reparations, the German government chose to print money rather than tax its citizens. But the destruction of the currency wasn't just incompetence. For some, it was strategy. Rudolf Havenstein, the president of the Reichsbank, continued to buy foreign currency with German marks, even as the mark became worthless. The hyperinflation wiped out the middle class and eliminated domestic debt, but it cleared the board for foreign acquisition. When the dust settled, who stepped in? Wall Street. The Dawes Plan of 1924 saw American banks flood into Germany to restructure the economy. They bought up German industry at rock-bottom prices. The crisis destroyed the savings of the average German worker, who needed a wheelbarrow of cash to buy bread, but it created a massive opportunity for international capital. Chaos for you is often opportunity for them. The cycle reset in 1944 at Bretton Woods. The US dollar became the king, pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. It was a promise. Our paper is as good as gold. And for 2 decades, it worked. America was the undisputed economic engine of the world. But governments cannot resist the temptation of the money printer. To pay for the Vietnam War and the Great Society programs without raising taxes, the US printed more dollars than it had gold. The French were the first to call the bluff. In 1971, the French government sent a battleship to New York Harbor to physically collect their gold. They knew the vault was running empty. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. He defaulted on the promise. The dollar became a fiat currency, backed by nothing but faith and military power. Since that day, the dollar has lost 98% of its value against gold. We entered the final, most dangerous phase of the cycle, a pure debt-based system with no anchor. Fast forward to today, we are at the end of the road that Nixon paved. The numbers are no longer manageable. The U.S. national debt is $36 trillion. The debt to GDP ratio is almost 100%. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet exploded from less than $1 trillion in 2008 to over $8 trillion today. This is the classic definition of Stage 3 overextension. The system is expanding the money supply far faster than the economy creates goods and services. This is why your grocery bill is up. This is why housing is unaffordable. It's not supply chains, it's monetary debasement. The system relies on the world continuing to accept dollars for real goods, but just like the British pound in 1930, the fundamentals are rotting. And just like the British bankers of the 19th century, the American financial elite aren't waiting for the walls to crumble. They are checking the fire exits. They know that a debt that cannot be paid will not be paid. It will be inflated away. This brings us back to the $1.4 trillion move. Why would American banks pour money into a communist rival? Because capital has no patriotism. It only seeks growth and safety. While Washington politicians argue about democracy versus authoritarianism, Wall Street sees a different chart. They see a U.S. economy burdened by unpayable debt and a saturated consumer market. Then they look at China, a massive industrial base, a growing consumer class, and a government that controls its own monetary plumbing. Goldman Sachs didn't just invest. They increased their stake in Chinese joint ventures. J.P. Morgan got approval for a majority-owned securities business in China during the trade war. They are building the lifeboats. They are ensuring that when the dollar system inevitably resets or loses its reserve status, they have a seat at the table of the next system. They are hedging against the collapse of the very country that made them rich. The scariest part of this pattern is how few people see it until it's too late. The British public didn't understand their empire was over until the 1930s. The German middle class didn't panic until the hyperinflation was already eating their savings. And today, Americans are distracted by culture wars and political theater while the economic foundation is being moved offshore. The trade war was the smoke. The capital flight is the fire. You cannot decouple from China when your pension funds are structurally overweighting Chinese assets. You cannot win a financial war when your own generals are funding the enemy. The mechanism is mathematical. When the reserve currency nation overleverages, the smart money leaves. We are witnessing the separation of the American financial elite from the American nation state. They are going global. You are stuck local. You will hear experts say, this time is different. They will talk about modern monetary theory, or how the US military ensures dollar dominance, or how technology will save us. These are comfortable lies. The pattern does not care about American exceptionalism. It is a function of gravity. Monopoly established. Done, 1913. Debt expansion. Done, 1944 to 2008. Currency debasing. Done, 1971 present. Capital flight. Executing now. The clock is ticking. The US dollar is being weaponized via sanctions, pushing Russia, China, and the BRICS nations to build an alternative payment system. And who is helping them build the financial bridges? The same banks are headquartered in New York. The transition is underway. The only question left is, where will you be standing when the music stops? This is not a prediction. This is an observation of a machine that is already in motion. The $1.4 trillion has already moved. The BlackRock algorithms have already reallocated. The mechanism is 3/4 complete. If you continue to operate as if the next 10 years will look like the last 30, you are making a bet that history has stopped repeating itself. You are betting against 300 years of financial gravity. The elite have positioned themselves for the transition from a US-centric world to a multipolar one. They have hedged their bets. Have you? Most people will only understand this shift after the collapse is complete, just like the citizens of Weimar Germany or post-Empire Britain. They will wake up one day to find their savings devalued and their purchasing power gone, wondering what happened. You have the rare opportunity to see the pattern while it is still executing. On this channel, we don't just watch the political puppet show. We dismantle the machine to see how it works. We track the capital flows, not the press releases. If you want to know how to position yourself before Stage 4 concludes, if you want to understand the architecture of the next financial system, you need to subscribe right now. Don't let them transfer your wealth without you even seeing it happen.